Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, you guys, obviously I'm not going to be reading on my phone, so you're not going to be able to follow along with all of it. I'm going to be reading on my tablet. Church of Scientology, a religious mafia. Craig Branch. Controversy continues to rage around Scientology, due mostly to the totalitarian and abusive nature of its practices. The evolution and history of Scientology raises serious and fundamental questions about freedoms and practices. The evolution and history of Scientology raises serious and fundamental questions about freedoms and protections of religion, and even what or who defines a religion. Scientology is an anomaly, or even a diverse religious landscape. It does, in fact, involve religious belief in what most outsiders would regard as science fiction. But that belief appears to have been built chiefly as a cover for exploitive commercial operations. Scientology history of terror and abuse appears to be the result of its founder, delusion, and paranoia. Evidence of L. Ron Hubbard's delusional character was well documented. In court, where the trial judge concluded, the organization Scientology clearly is schizophrenic and paranoid, and this bizarre combination seems to be a reflection of its founder, LRH, L. Ron Hubbard. The evidence portrays a man who has been virtually a pathological liar when it comes to his history, background, and achievements. Church of Scientology versus Armstrong, number Charlie 4-20153, California Supreme Court, 1984. Scientology is governed by inviolate policies or scriptures of L. Ron Hubbard, which when followed have produced an extraordinary record of institutionalized abuse, especially of children, financial exploitation, harassment, intimidation, civil and criminal convictions of its members, leaders, and even the church itself. Imagine that the LAPD is all about it. Can you imagine? I always thought the jobs of police officers was to actually enforce the law. Guess I missed the boat. One critic, Reader's Digest senior editor Eugene Methvin, experienced serious harassment by Scientology. He is aptly charged, Scientology is far more than mere religion. It is a multinational racket masquerading as a religion. Scientology, the sickness spreads. Reader's Digest, September 1981, reprint, page 2. Scientology believes that it alone has the solution to mankind's problems. This is not different from many religions, including Christianity, but the similarity stops there. Scientology officials have repeatedly taunted that it is not a turn the other cheek religion, e.g. Lulsa Goodman, New Religions, The Cult Question, MTV News, and Specials, June 1995. Not turning the other cheek may involve subjecting followers or critics to involuntary servitude, hard labor in rehabilitation camps, slander, hiring private detectives to harass and intimidate dirty tricks, and lawsuits. Scientology has a twisted view of ethics, believing that anything is permissible, which advances the goals of Scientology. Those goals include doing whatever needs to be done to bring the government and hostile philosophies or societies into a state of complete compliance. Like the last 4 years of everyone's lives? With the goals of Scientology, this is done by a high-level ability to control, to overwhelm, introvert such agencies, control such agencies. HCO Policy Letter of August 15, 1960. Scientology's objective is to clear the planet. This can only be accomplished through recruiting people, often by deception. Also, let's include children. Let's not forget the word children. Into taking a multitude of expensive counseling courses in order to be rid of aberrations from present and past lives, reincarnation, and arrive at a state of clear. One then learns that one must continue to advance through the levels of Hubbard's bizarre science fiction cosmology of operating thetans in order to survive. The whole process can include billion-year contracts, but 200,000 to 400,000 in this lifetime. Involvement has proven even more costly for many people. There have been losses of marriages, possessions, life savings, family relationships, and sanity. And the most tragic from the Christian point of view, Scientology leads to an eternity separated from God. A recent episode of 60 Minutes exposed some of the corrupt and deceptive tactics of Scientology. CBS, December 28, 1997. Interviewer Leslie Stahl asked former Cult Awareness Network executive director Cynthia Kisser if she still stood by her statement. Scientology, the Cult of Greed, Time, May 6, 1991, that Scientology is quite likely the most ruthless, the most classically terrorist, the most litigious, and the most lucrative cult the country has ever seen. Ms. Kisser responded, "Oh, more than ever, everything they've done since just proves that," quote. Transcript on file. I love how they cite everything. That's how things used to be done, and it should still be done like that. Not just randomly writing articles and people are supposed to just believe it with no references. Abusing the legal system. 2 recent and protracted cases clearly demonstrate how Scientology assiduously carries out the policies initiated by L. Ron Hubbard for intimidating and harassing its enemies. Scientology's target is the first case was a former Scientologist, Larry Wollersheim. In 1986, Wollersheim won a $30 million jury verdict in compensatory and punitive damages against the Church of Scientology, California, Mother Church, in a case that began in 1980. This was later reduced on appeal to $2.5 million. You see this crap? In other words, Scientology just gets away with stuff. It's sickening. The courts found that Scientology was guilty of intentional and negligent infliction of severe emotional harm. Only were $2.5 million? Sick of it. They wrote, any one of these acts against Wollersheim exceeds the bounds usually tolerated by a decent society so as to constitute outrageous conduct. The Church's actions unquestionably constituted reckless disregard for the likelihood of causing emotional distress. The policy of a fair game, by its nature, was intended to punish the person who dared to leave the church. Here the church actively encouraged its members to destroy Wollersheims' business. Sorry, I lost my place now. Further, by physically restraining Wollersheim from leaving the church's ship, like Valerie Haney, and subjecting him to further auditing despite his protests. Yeah, that's called against someone's will. Imagine all the children getting auditing against their will. The church ignored Wollersheim's emotional state, like they do all the children, and callously compelled him to continue in a practice known to cause him emotional distress. Daily Appellate Report, July 1st, 1989, page 9270. Still doing that to children right now. Where is the justice for the children? This account bears striking parallels to the recent account of Lisa McPherson, whose struggle ended in death. See The Watchman Expositor, Volume 14, Number 5. Scientology continues its insistence that the fair game policy was canceled. It's a great short story. In 1968, but the Daily Appellate Report shows the court found that despite the church's public rejection of the fair game practices, it continued to use fair game against targeted ex-Scientologists through the 1970s. Page 9274, emphasis added. Almost like what Rinder's still doing, even though he's on his deathbed. Almost like Rinder's still fair gaming people. Scientology, true to form, attempted every legal maneuver they could to escape this judgment, regardless of merit. The case went up to the California Supreme Court twice, and even to the U.S. Supreme Court. Scientology countersued Wollersheim, of course they did, and the California Appellate Court has thrown out that suit and awarded Wollersheim his attorney fees. The judgment now stands at $6,025,857, including accrued interest. Wollersheim's attorneys have won another significant amended judgment. They prove to the court's satisfaction that the Church of Scientology has conducted a pattern of systematically shuffling their assets between various church-owned or affiliated corporate entities to avoid payment to Wollersheim. Yeah, that's the oldest gangster trick in the books. LAPD is fine with it. The court found that the Religious Technology Center run by David Miscavige and Church of Scientology International were all alter egos of the Church of Scientology, California. The court ruled that Scientology acted in bad faith, which would result in an injustice to plaintiff. Los Angeles Daily Journal, December 12, 1997. Attorney Dan Leopold, who has been a very successful litigator against Scientology, observes that Scientology believes they can do no wrong, that any finding against them is injustice, and that everybody is conspiring against them to destroy them. They only use the law as a tool, and it is a tool to utterly destroy their enemies. IBID. Yeah, just utterly destroy is right in the policies of LRH. The courts agree. The California Appellate Court found Scientology's countersuit of Wollersheim was consistent with a pattern of conduct by the Church to employ every means, regardless of merit, to frustrate or undermine Wollersheim's petition activity. The Church's lawsuit was A, in retaliation for his 1980 lawsuit against the Church, B, to punish him economically for bringing that lawsuit, and C, to obliterate the value of any victories over the Church by forcing him to abandon his efforts. Church of Scientology versus L. Woolersheim, NOS, Bravo 084686, Bravo 086063. Scientology's target is the second case. In the second case was David Mayo, also a former Scientologist. Mayo won big in the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Mayo was suing Scientology, and in typical fashion, Scientology sued him back. The court dismissed Scientology's suit and awarded Mayo $2.9 million in attorney's fees. The court applied the tough sanctions against Scientology, saying the church had been playing fast and loose with the legal system by filing countless frivolous motions, employing evasions, misrepresentations, broken promises, and lies, destruction and concealment of documents. Who does that sound like, you guys? Concealment of documents? Sound familiar? You guys know what I'm talking about. Los Angeles Daily Journal, April 18th, 1996, page 3. The validity of the court's findings concerning the continuation of Scientology's fair game policy and other abusive directives was dramatically demonstrated in two other major criminal convictions of Scientology leaders and even the church itself. The first of these, as reported in the Watchman Expositor, Volume 14, Number 5, followed a 1977 FBI raid on Scientology headquarters that produced comprehensive evidence of stolen government documents. Spies planted in the IRS and Justice Department planted bugging devices in 48,000 documents, detailing smear campaigns. Who does that sound like? Orchestrated against critics of the church. Hubbard's wife, Mary Sue, and 10 other Scientologists were convicted and received prison terms. One of the more egregious clandestine attacks, uncovered in evidence obtained in the raid, was carried out against Paulette Cooper, author of the 1972 book, The Scandal of Scientology. Following Hubbard's directive of, if possible, of course, ruin him utterly, Scientologists smeared Cooper's reputation, then framed her for a felony using stationery she had touched, which therefore contained her fingerprints. They forgot a bomb threat against the church. Upon discovering the plot, called Operation Freakout, the prosecutors dropped all charges against Cooper. Besides the emotional anguish and disruption of her life, Scientology's outrageous fraudulent persecution of her cost Cooper $26,000 in legal and psychiatric fees. Los Angeles Times, June 24, 1990, Alpha 39. Yeah, a good book to check out is I can't think of the name of it. I've got it on my Kindle. The Paulette Cooper book. Eventually I'm going to read from that one too, but I can only concentrate on one book at a time. Another such attack and destroy campaign, uncovered by the FBI raid, was carried out against the then mayor of Clearwater, Florida, Gabe Casares. Documents revealed that Scientology agents staged a fake hit-and-run accident. Don't you guys want to know who was involved in that? You guys know who probably was, right? Think about that one. Against Casares, Washington Post, April 28, 1978, page Alpha 1. Furthermore, Scientology attorney Merrill Vanier persuaded Casares to use his services in a lawsuit against Scientology. From this undercover position, Vanier was able to provide inside information to Scientology, as well as gain access to sensitive files in the State Attorney General's office, which was conducting an investigation of the local Scientology organization. After the facts became known, Vanier was disbarred. Good. by the Florida Supreme Court. Tampa Tribune, November 27th, 1986, page 15, Bravo, opinion 498. I'm going to stop reading the citations. They're a little too much. But just know they're in there. The Scientologists also planted spies in the Clearwater Sun and St. Petersburg Times newspapers, the Clearwater Chamber of Commerce, and engaged in various efforts to frame their critics. St. Petersburg Times. Okay. Eventually, a federal judge ruled the cult's suit frivolous, unreasonable, and groundless, and made the Scientologists pay Casade's legal cost of $36,000. Of course it's 36, you guys. $36,022. Scientology, The Sickness Spreads, in Reader's Digest. The second major court case resulting in criminal conviction occurred in Canada, where the Church of Scientology and 3 of its members were found guilty of breach of trust for conducting espionage against the government. Similar to what they did in the U.S., it was the first time in Canada that a church had been found guilty of criminal activity. The church was also found guilty of libel against the Canadian prosecuting attorney. It was fined a record $2.1 million. According to the Toronto Sun report on the case, Marion Envoy, former Canadian head of Scientology's Guardian office, was asked how she reconciled her criminal activities with some of Scientology's statements of principles regarding honesty and freedom. She replied, "It was the way I was trained, whatever was necessary to protect Hubbard and Scientology." Too bad the children in Scientology couldn't be protected like that, right? No, the children are what they feast off of. Criminal acts of that kind were not considered against my code, any code, or moral in Scientology, because you were protecting Scientology. It's May 15th, 1992. As it's so often the case in Scientology, the end justified the means. What does that sound like, you guys? I'm innocent. Other cases of abuse, harassment, and tragedy. Watchman has on file many records of Scientology's institutionalized pattern of harassment and abuse of those it perceives as an enemy, and its tragic consequences. Too many to print here for lack of space. The following are but a few representative examples. 1. Respected British biographer Russell Miller wrote a quite revealing book, Barefaced Messiah, The True Story of L. Ron Hubbard. Following Hubbard's attack policies, Scientology not only sued him in Britain and the United States, but hired their chief private investigators, Eugene Ingram, to discredit him. Miller soon found himself being questioned by the police. Oh, that's not convenient, is it? As a suspect for a murder because of an anonymous tip-off from someone who used an extensive knowledge of Miller's work in private life to try to frame him. That came from the Sunday Times. 2. Scientology has a history of using private investigators to pursue and harass critics. Eugene Ingram, fired from the Los Angeles Police Department. Oh. So there was a cop going against him. That's nice. And look what they did to him. They fired him. In 1981, is one of the most notorious. Warrants for Ingram's arrest are still outstanding in Florida and Oklahoma for impersonating. Oh, this guy. Oh, okay. He impersonated. For impersonating a police officer and for carrying a concealed weapon. Imagine the LAPD is aware of all this, right? Interesting. 3. Scientology claims to always deliver through its alleged total freedom technology, yet Noah Loddick, 24, jumped to his death from the 10th floor of a Manhattan building after paying Scientology $3,000 and earlier most of his savings for their courses. It's from the Times Leader. 4. L. Ron Hubbard's own son committed bluicide from a hose hooked from the tailpipe in his car. Allegedly, you guys. There are a great number of Scientology-associated suicides or attempted suicides listed on the website. factnet.org. 5. Many out-of-court settlements have been paid to plaintiffs and defendants in cases involving Scientology. In most of the settlements, the parties are barred from disclosing the amount. They don't want anyone else to get any ideas, do they? It has been revealed, however, that Julie Tichborne received $100,000. Gerald Armstrong received $800,000. Court documents in a U.S. District Court also revealed that Scientology had been willing to pay $650,000 to 4 of at least 10 plaintiffs, who all later settled for an undisclosed amount. The church also settled 4 multi-million-dollar suits as well, as with 11 other plaintiffs, and others with claims against the church for $2.8 million in 1986. William Holm, The Two Faces of Scientology, American Lawyer. Oh, it's another book. July 1992. 6. Watchman has on file many published accounts of intense harassment and abuse of former members, media reporters, television companies, newspapers and magazines, lawyers, and even trial judges who had anything to do with either criticizing or bringing Scientology to justice. Isn't that a federal crime to try to intimidate judges? Did I miss something, you guys? 2 American Lawyer articles detail the extraordinary and chilling accounts of consistent harassment and acts of intimidating experienced by various judges assigned to significant lawsuits against Scientology. One tactic most often used against those who dare to expose abuse in Scientology is a pattern of slanderous information distribution in the critic's neighborhood or workplace. That came from the Sunday Times. Recently, when participants in a peaceful demonstration over Lisa McPherson's death at Scientology's headquarters in Clearwater arrived home, they discovered flyers distributed around their neighborhoods accusing the Scientology critics as religious bigots, a threat to family or worse. The respected professional writer's journal, The Quill, details the extent of the horrendous intimidation and smear tactics of Scientology against the Los Angeles Times, Time Magazine, Reader's Digest, and other major publishers and their reporters. But some of the most chilling are the stories of personal abuse, including people being held against their will, like children, unless they complied with more Scientology processing, or being told that they would commit suicide or harm their children if they didn't take more expensive Scientology courses. Reader's Digest senior editor Eugene Methvin quotes former Scientology leader Lorna Levette, whose conscience would not allow her to continue in what she came to recognize as an international conspiracy, psychological coercion by dangerous mind-bending cults, under cover of religion, can only occur like diseases when there's no immunization against it, she declared. In this case, the immunization is freedom of speech. The cults, using tax-free dollars, can violate human rights only when the truth is allowed to go unpublished. And that was from a Reader's Digest article. Methvin himself says it well. Above all, the 20th century record of leader cults demonstrates that such collectives need watching. Nothing in our legal tradition requires us to shut our eyes to a racket religion simply because it masquerades and claims immunity under our First Amendment. That's from Reader's Digest. Americans rightly appreciate the special constitutional religious freedoms enjoyed in their country. They should not be deceived. However, by Scientology's repeated efforts to wrap its practices in the cloak of the Constitution and First Amendment protections, by claiming bigotry and persecution, actually it is Scientology's own heinous and nefarious activities of individual abuse and abuse of the legal system, which jeopardizes everyone's religious and personal freedoms. It is Watchman Fellowship's biblical mission to warn others to have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove, expose, and rebuke them. For it is a shame even to speak those things which are done by them in secret, but all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. Ephesians 5:11 through 13. Jesus warns, for everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved, exposed, and rebuked. But that he doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. John 3:20-21. Not surprisingly, Scientology policy is never agreed to an investigation of Scientology. That comes from HCO Policy Letter of 25, February 1966. LAPD, how about that? Hey, LAPD, Scientology as a policy never agreed to an investigation. How about that? These issues are brought forward out of love and compassion for those still in Scientology, in hopes that they will escape. But the scripture also bears a grave warning. He that being often reproved hardeneth his neck shall suddenly be destroyed, and that without remedy. Proverbs 29:1. No doubt Jesus had such a penalty in mind when he said, and fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Matthew 10:28. So that's it, you guys. I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.